We'll continue our investigation of Java objects by looking at constructors. Let's start by looking at this command for instantiating and declaring a dice object called myDice. The part that I've highlighted there looks a lot like a method, but it's actually a constructor. Constructors look and behave a lot like methods and are often referred to by programmers as constructor methods for that reason. Java provides default constructors for our objects, but there are times when we'd like a little bit more control over how we instantiate an object. In that case, we like to write our own constructors to replace the default constructor. So, for example, say we wanted to instantiate dice with different numbers of sides. How would we write a constructor to do that for us? You can see the constructor shown here in red. There are a couple of things that you need to perhaps take notice of. Firstly, the name of the constructor is the same as the name of the class. That's needed. You'll also notice that unlike other methods, there's no return type. What this constructor does is instantiate a dice object with a set number of sides and passes that value back to the variable faces so that it can be used by the roll dice method later. Once we've written our own constructor, we can no longer use the default constructor. So we need to specify the number of sides that our dice is going to have. So now what we write is dice, myDice equals new dice, and then the number of sides in brackets, so that a dice with 6 sides is instantiated in this case. Okay, so let's run this code and see what it looks like. Here I have my dice project, and you can see the dice class there with the constructor method, which allows me to create dice objects with any number of sides I like. There's also the use dice applet, which instantiates my dice and rolls the dice to give a result. Now at the moment you can see I have a dice object there being created with 24 sides. So let's run this and see what happens. First roll of the dice gives us a result of 15, and the second roll of the dice gives us a result of 22. So everything seems to be okay. Let's change that now to make that a more standard dice with 6 sides. We change that to 6. Now let's run that and see how we go. So on the first roll we get a 3, and on the second roll we get a 5. So everything seems to be working fine. Our constructor is allowing us to produce dice objects with any number of sides we like, and the roll dice method seems to be working well as well. So let's summarise what we've learned about constructors. Constructor methods are a special type of method for instantiating objects. They have no return type and they need to have the same name as the class definition. One thing I haven't mentioned is that we can have more than one constructor for our objects. So, for instance, in our dice example, we could have a second constructor which assigned values to the sides of the dice. The compiler provides a default constructor for our objects, which we can replace or override if we want more control over how our objects are instantiated. However, once we have written a constructor, the default one is no longer available, and if we still need a default constructor for some reason, then we would need to write it ourselves. So that's our summary of constructors.